For today's episode, we're introducing Team Bio-Spire, a group of 12 undergraduate students at the University of Rochester that have prototyped a device that diagnoses sepsis using the biomarkers in sweat. This past November, the team brought home a gold medal, as well as nominations in Best Hardware, Best Diagnostic, as well as Best Education Awards at the prestigious Synthetic Bioengineering competition, iGEM. For this episode, we are joined by two of the team members, Blaine and Maria. Let's welcome them on our set. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So why don't we start with a round of introduction, and then we'll get going to the rest of the show.
My name is Maria. I am a junior and molecular genetics major, and I'm from outside of Boston in Lexington, Massachusetts.
And I'm Blaine. I am an applied math major from Boise, Idaho.
Perfect. And I'm Prajita, and I'm joined by Rob and Rachel behind the camera. So let's start our question. Let's talk a little bit about this device. So could you talk a little bit about what Bio-Spire is and why it's created so much of a buzz in the scientific community?
Sure. So it's a non-invasive diagnostic device that can attach to a patient's forearm, and it uses sweat to basically see if a disease or infection is present or not. So for our project, we decided to use sepsis as our model disease. So we looked at biomarkers in sweat for sepsis and if they would bind to essentially the device or not, and if the readout would indicate if sepsis is present. But our device is, in the future, we would love it to be for multiple diseases. So it doesn't just have to be for sepsis. The same concept can apply for other diseases that are present.
Yeah. No, that sounds wonderful. And I've heard that like sepsis is so common. So it's really nice that we have a device now that can detect it so easily. And you bring a very good point that the scope is pretty big, right?
Yeah.
And that brings me actually to my next question. What do you think is like the scope of this device? Where do you think the applications lie in the near future?
Yeah, so the thing about sepsis is that if you catch it within what they call the golden hour, right, it's quite treatable. We have decent medications that doctors can prescribe if they're confident that they're actually dealing with sepsis. But sepsis can look like a lot of other things. It can look like inflammation. Some of the biomarkers that are elevated in sepsis are actually elevated when you have a heart attack, which is quite different from sepsis, right? So what we tried to do is distinguish based on some additional biomarkers that we added, these long chemical names that I can't remember off the top of my head, that are different between sepsis and other conditions. And as Maria mentioned, it's modular, right? Any disease that has like biomarker-based diagnosis, we can swap out the receptors and have receptors for those biomarkers on the electrodes in our device, detect those as long as those biomarkers are detectable in sweat, right? And so some of the next step would be trials in people. We have to stimulate sweat because if you're lying in a hospital bed, you know, it's not exactly rigorous exercise. You're not profusely sweating. So we have to stimulate, and then that gives us more of a sample to work with. And if we do that, like trials, this is obviously after like some serious FDA approval, and I don't know exactly what the next steps would be, but it would involve getting a lot more data so that we can actually develop a really clear idea of what the mathematical relationship is the part I go crazy for, right? Math major, between the concentration in sweat and in blood, because the blood concentration is actually what you use to make the diagnosis. So we just try to predict the blood concentration based on what the device actually measures in sweat.
Another thing like I was very genuinely impressed with is like the accessibility part of this device, right? It's been a key priority in your design process. So could you guys tell a little bit more about what kind of accessibility related issues does like the design overcome, right?
So one of the things we wanted going into this was to make it accessible, was to make it low cost. So that, based off of the materials we use, we really like try to focus on if you're in a location that doesn't have like access to like some sort of high tech like manufacturing, like will you be able to use this, right? So we use a lot of 3D thing, which has gotten like significantly cheaper over the years. And we that measures in current that is detected, like when the biomarkers flow through on our electrodes on our device. So we manufactured that because one of the ways we would have had to measure current is to use what's called an oscilloscope, and we didn't have that. It's expensive to have, so we were able to find a group that actually was at Northeastern that made a really low cost potentiostat. They like 3D printed it, used a bunch of low cost circuit materials. So we took that and then paired it with the mathematical modeling that they also had with it. And then the total cost for that was about $40, which is like, you know, a relatively cheap.
The other thing I was like super curious about was this journey that you guys have been on, right? It started back in the day, like 2020, if I'm if I'm correct. So it's been a couple of years. So I was kind of curious, who are some of the collaborators or partners you guys have had in this journey that you've appreciated their mentorship and their guidance?
I found it pretty helpful to reach out to the 2020 iGEM team. Right, I know I was our modeling manager, and I reached out to the previous year's modeling manager for like, I've never programmed before. How do I do this, right? The thing about iGEM is it's student-led, right? Our mentors have so much expertise in the area, so they're always available as like, oh, take this approach. But they don't want to just tell us what to do, right? So at the beginning, they're like, come up with like 50 ideas for a potential project, right? We apply in October of 2020. We start in February in 2021, and we just come up with as many ideas as possible. We had like 20 different spreadsheets. It was insane. And we narrow it down.
Incredible.
Yeah, the shared iGEM drive, there's a lot of documents in there. And so we're doing research, we're like reading scientific papers, which I was like a first year at the time. So I don't know how to read synthetic biology research articles. And I'm trying to figure out like which of these ideas is feasible, which of them has a new direction that we could go in that's possible but also new, right? And then so we get it down to a top 10, we present it to our advisors. Another month later, we get it down to 3 ideas, we present to our advisors, and we choose our team roles, right? And that's when we start meeting with collaborators. We start meeting with, I think we met with a physician or 2 from URMC.
We met with a nurse, her name is Kate Valcine, and she like actually took us into Strong and like walked us through one of the like
the neuro ICU, I think,
and she like showed us the hospital room setup, and then was able to give us some materials that she was like, this would be really good to use, or something like this, because we knew that nurses would be our main like user of this device. So we wanted to like hear from her what we would need to use. So she gave us some like tips and redirections for like the materials to use for like the sleeve especially. I think that was important.
Yeah, we met, like nurses are the front line, right? Because they would be actually reading off of our device, right? And then they would bring the doctor would make the final determination of like, is this sepsis? But the device is continuously monitoring. The doctor can't always be in there. So each time it's a nurse that's coming in to check. And so it was important to talk to her. I think we met with a team all the way in Brazil, actually. And they validated our software and our model for, we talked about the modularity and ability to customize to different diseases. I don't remember what their disease was, but that they were detecting, but it worked for them as well, the software. They plugged in the equations they determined from modeling in the same format that we set it up for. We tried to make the code super flexible and adaptable for other teams, and it worked. So that was cool to collaborate with a team, you know, on an entirely different continent.
And that goes back to like the scope of the product that we talked about earlier, right? There's so much scope around the globe, it seems like, which is really nice.
And we were able to meet with like, I know hardware, like the people who worked on the hardware aspect of the project had little to no hardware experience. So that was like a very, like Blaine said, student run team, but our mentors like are all more bio based. So we had to meet with both. We had Helen is now
The TA.
She was a TA, yeah. So we met with one of the TAs who worked on the 2020 iGEM team.
Right.
So she helped us a lot with like learning hardware. And then we also met with like professors and other professionals like in Europe. And
Yeah, there was a professor from Rochester and a professor from the Netherlands, all over the place.
Yeah, we met with the Brazil team too, and they like also helped us with some of our hardware. So it was very global in like where we were able to get help from too.
It just sounds like you guys started with very little knowledge, but then you guys worked out of passion and a lot of hard work. I'm so proud that you guys have been such a good team, and you guys have brought so much to the science world, but also the University of Rochester too. So now we're gonna move on to our next section, which is a fun game, and we're gonna do Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader for this week?
Ooh, that is debatable.
So the game's very simple. We have a cowbell, so as soon as I finish the question, if you know the answer, you can reach for it, and we're gonna start the game. My first question, how many grams are there in 1,000 kilograms?
1,000.
Wrong.
1 million.
Yes.
You gotta take that one out. Math major cannot be seen getting that one
I had
wrong.
to count to 0.
Okay, another math one, so hopefully you'll shine this time. Ron saves $32 every single day. How much will he have saved in a year of 365 days?
Oh God, 32. Wait, he saves $32
Per day?
per day, 365.
Around 100,000.
No, that's not even.
Oops.
Okay.
The correct answer was 11,680.
Man, how did I mess it? Anyway.
The next one is a little sciencey. Why do you see lightning before you hear the thunder?
Because light travels faster than sound.
Yes.
Boom, tied up.
So next question, how long does it take for the moon to orbit the Earth?
A month?
Yes.
Wait. Oh.
Okay, next question. What measures distance from north to south of the equator? Is it the latitude or the longitude?
Latitude.
Yes. What planet is nicknamed the Red Planet?
Mars.
Yes. Okay, another easy one. What do you call a scientist who studies rocks?
Geologist.
Yes. Which tool is used to estimate the likelihood of certain genetic outcomes?
Punnett square.
Where is the largest desert in the world?
Continent?
What?
Yeah, that's
Africa.
yes. It's Northern Africa.
Oh, I thought your answer was continent, and I was like, what?
I was confirming that it had to be that.
Okay, next one, another very easy one. What is the main character of a story called?
Protagonist?
Yeah. The very last one to wrap up this game, another fairly easy one. What is the longest river in the world?
Nile? Oh.
Put back. Amazon.
Yes. And that wraps up our game session for today.
Scoreboard.
So check out the scoreboard. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a little bit of gifts for our winners, which is both of you.
Nice.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Brigitte.
Thank you so much for having us. Hope you guys had fun today, and we had a great time having you at the set today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.